Welcome to Nature Therapy Online. Hello folks, and welcome to episode 20 of Nature Therapy Online. Now, the topic today that I want to talk about is a topic that a lot of people find upsetting or distressing or perhaps morbid, because I think that dog's a little bit unhappy about the topic that's to come. What do you think? Because I want to talk today a little bit about death in nature, and that includes us because we're a part of nature as well, but it isn't only about us. So I'm stood here, well, I was stood until a second ago, just underneath a big old yew tree, but usually in this graveyard that I'm in, which might not be as a surprise to you considering the topic. It's usually completely quiet, completely dead, if you pardon the pun, but actually a few visitors just came. So I moved over a little bit, and as you can hear, all of a sudden there's the river, the same river that we visited a few weeks ago, actually. So I'm actually going to go a little bit closer to the river, and I will speak up a little bit so that you can hear me. Take the dog down here. Come on, Deirdre, this way. Come on. My plan was to look over some graves perhaps, and I might do that in a short while, but what I'd like to do is just take a little walk and talk about death a little bit. How afraid in the West we are to talk about the most natural thing that happens to us as human beings. I think personally I became a lot happier in my life when I spent a little bit of time each day contemplating the fact that, like everything else in nature, I'm going to die, rather than pushing it away and being afraid of it. Now obviously this is a topic that is not for everybody at every time, especially if we're perhaps unwell, or we're facing an illness, or we're suffering a bereavement. So I totally understand that there's people who don't want to engage with this topic at this time. I'm sure there have been times in my life that I couldn't have listened to this, but I guess there are other times in our lives where it might be a good thing to contemplate death a little bit more. I guess it all depends where we are in life and what's going on for us. But here I am, I've moved behind the graveyard, and the yew trees are incredible here. There's an old stone wall, really old stone wall behind the graveyard, and there must be, say, 20 yew trees. I don't know how old these are. There's one I'm looking up at now that's almost certainly dead itself. The bark is left, it's leaning over. I'm going to move over now and touch its dry branches. And alongside it there are a lot of living yew trees, and yew trees have been the symbol of death in graveyards in the UK anyway for centuries, maybe even thousands of years. There's a lot of folklore around death and yew trees and how they're perhaps a gateway to another world, another realm, another place. They're beautiful. And what I consider when I look at this yew tree and how its branches are leaning over, how some of its branches have broken off, is how they're becoming part of the earth underneath my feet again. So it's starting to spring new life. And this cycle is, basic, very basic science, but it's also, I think, a beautiful thing to reflect on spiritually. I want you to listen to that sound, the fallen leaves, the autumn leaves, because down here, behind the graveyard, behind the yew trees, I'm in this small little secret woodlands where not many people come, and it's just completely covered with fallen leaves. But somehow we don't necessarily mourn for all of the fallen leaves that are becoming part of the earth and have a strong reaction to them in the way that we might have a strong reaction, say, if I was to all of a sudden stumble over, for example, a dead deer or a dead dog. I would be devastated, I would be shocked, I would be horrified to some degree, even though in a way it's part of this big, amazing cycle, becoming part of the earth again. I'm sure somebody would pick it up and fetch it away maybe, but perhaps some birds would come down and eat, make use of the corpses, but all the same I would find it a really morbid sight, because I guess I would identify with it, and that identification would then make me think about my own death somewhere deep down, even if I was conscious of it or not. And yet getting over those thoughts and acknowledging how frightening they are, and coming out in nature and looking at how death is actually everywhere. I mean, it's in all of these leaves underneath my feet that you can hear. It's in the yew tree leaning over. There's a huge broken old tree in front of me, and it's huge, that tree. I don't know if it was it looks like it was maybe a beech tree. I mean, that might have lived for 100 years, I don't know. But I'm looking at how it's broken off at the roots, and I'm seeing the potential for home for little creatures. There's a lot of voles that live around here. I love voles, and they seem to burrow everywhere and make nests wherever they can. My imagination is starting to play with that. I'm looking at this broken down tree and wondering what's living in there, because you can guarantee that there are animals living in there, whether it's as big as a vole or some insects. It's created a home for someone. Hey Euro. Euro's back. He's wondering why I'm talking to myself in the woods. He's often wondering that, aren't you, Euro? Just taking another little stroll here. Maybe you would like to take a bit of silent time for a moment and think about the cycle of life and death and how nature shows it to us, but also how nature shows us how everything is change, And when we can embrace that change, that's when life can become really special and really magical. Because if we look at the symbols of death that are all around us everywhere, all the time, the sights of death in nature and the rejuvenation that comes from it, somehow it points to how precious this moment is. You know, this fleeting life that we have. And we can choose to be frightened of that. Or we can choose to take a moment to look at our bodies, hold our hand up in front of our face and go, wow, how did this happen? Where did I come from? And I don't have answers to these questions, and I don't want them either. But it does make me reflect on how this moment that I'm living right here, right now, is not forever. This fresh air I can breathe here on this gorgeous planet is not forever. It's a moment. In the grand scheme of the universe, we're here for a very short time, and yet we spend so much of that time worrying about nonsense. About who said this and who said that. And what does this person think of me? And I wish I'd have done more when I was younger. Or where's my life going? What have I done with my life? I used to do a lot of that. I think it's a really normal way of thinking. And I still do a bit of it now, to be honest. More than I'd like. But when I do, I come back to this reflection. I might look out for little signs of death in nature and choose to see it as a beautiful reminder of this magical, special life that I've been given, whether deliberately or accidentally, whatever your beliefs are. It's a gift. And you know, a lot of things change and move, perhaps. We have a spirit and that's recycled somehow. I don't know what your beliefs are around rebirth or reincarnation or anything like that, but you don't need to have any beliefs in that. You just need to have a basic belief in science, even, just to see how death becomes life again, how nothing disappears, everything changes and evolves. Europe! Sorry folks, my dog's gone off to make friends with people again in the graveyard. Come on, Euro. Come on, love, we're talking about death over here. There you go. I knew you'd like that. Come on. I suppose just before we finish this episode slowly, I wanted to come and look at a gravestone that I've not looked at before. See, this graveyard where I'm at, in Temple in Midlothian, it's a pretty special place. There are some old ruins of the Knights Templars main temple in Scotland here. These ruins go back about 1,000 years old. And there's all kinds of really interesting and strange graves here. Come on, Yora. But I thought I would, maybe take a look at one and just, for a moment, not necessarily in a morbid way, not in a morbid way at all, just have a little look, consider the life that person had. Consider the gift that they had, just like me and just like you. Elizabeth Cumming died 28th of January 1850, aged 75. That's what it says here. And this big old stone covered in lichen, surrounded by tall grass. She had a husband called David Fairley and children Janet, Thomas, Helen and Janet. Again, another Janet, okay. Looks like one Janet died really young and another one was named after her, maybe in her honour. I wonder what Elizabeth's ties were around here, what she did. I wonder what parts of nature she liked to be part of or to be sitting with. Where she would come, if she was from this area. I'm assuming she was. I wonder if Janet took time and moment, or Helen, and all of the people who honour him with this gravestone, took time to do just what I'm doing now and what I hope you're doing right now as well, which is just appreciate being here and being alive right now. Just do that for a moment. Let's be silent and listen to this river in the distance, how it's moving and changing, just like you and me. Let's take a moment of silence to enjoy being alive. I want you to, when you go for a walk this week, look for any little symbols of death that you find. That can be as simple as a fallen leaf. And let it remind you, when your mind is full of stresses and worries, that these stresses and worries are irrelevant. They're distractions from life. We have this precious gift and we should use it. We should acknowledge it, be with it. Through the sound of the wind, the feeling of the air against the skin, the colours that we see, the things we can touch. That's my invitation to you. And I do invite you to do that if you feel in a good place to be exploring this topic, because it's a difficult topic, and as I said before, it's not for everyone at every moment, at every time in our lives. But for some of us, it may be the right moment to start to find a way to be more comfortable with this natural process that we all go through. And that's me for this episode, folks. I want to say thank you for listening, and I want to just invite you to enjoy nature and enjoy being alive. Being alive. Enjoy silence. Enjoy your week, folks. Thank you for tuning in. And if you want to leave comments or reviews, or ratings wherever you listen to your podcasts. I would really appreciate that. And I would also love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your ideas for upcoming shows, and I would like to hear what you think of the episodes so far. Take care, folks. That's me for now, and I will see you next week. Bye bye. Visit me online at naturetherapyonline.net.